Today I'm going to talk to you about breaking the news. It's extremely timely, I think, if anyone and everyone is following what's happening in the United States politics and across the world. The Washington Post has really become the voice for what's happening in a very partisan type way. And there's certain strategies that we leverage to do that, which I'm going to take you through, which hopefully you could ingest and make applicable for whatever part of business you work in. So yeah, I'll start. Does anyone know who that is, by the way? Quick question. No? So that's Ben Bradley. Ben Bradley was the executive editor of the Washington Post during the Nixon Watergate scandal. So if you want to make synonyms to what's happening today, he's extremely important. So we're owned by Jeff Bezos. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of that, but it's made a significant impact at what we do at the Washington Post. To the left is Robert Redford, but he's playing Bob Woodward in All the President's Men, which was an extremely monumental moment in Washington Post history. It was through Watergate. It was the impeachment of an American president. And that's what we were known for. You know, the Washington Post has 60-plus Pulitzers. We have an extremely impressive newsroom. Marty Barron, our editor-in-chief, was named Editor of the Year by Vanity Fair. But with Jeff Bezos coming to the Post, we've become a technology company. So personally, I joined the Washington Post in September of 2015 because of the influence that Jeff was going to have at the Post and the opportunity to work with someone that's so strong in technology to help innovate and change the way that we look at journalism. To date, since Jeff bought the Washington Post, we've had 250-plus total newsroom hires. So while everyone is shrinking, and while there's a struggle with investments and figuring out how to fund journalism, and again, that's a constant topic of debate where we need freedom of speech. You know, now more than ever, we need journalists questioning the status quo. We need investment, and we need dollars in order to do that. And Jeff buying the Post has allowed us to invest in talented newsroom hires all over the world. We also have 95-plus engineering hires. So the Washington Post has over 300 engineers. And I think that's tremendous coming from a company that is a legacy news org. I think you look at the publishing space today, and there's companies like BuzzFeed and the Huffington Post that are strong technology companies that do journalism. We were a journalism company that did technology okay. And this investment and our strong focus on doing technology and really figuring out what tools do we need and what tools could we test on the Post and release is really helping us change how we're structured within this landscape. And the growth has been tremendous. I mean, if you look at unique visitors, when Jeff bought the company in October of 2013, we were a bit under 10 million uniques. Now we're well over 100 million uniques. We're tied for number 2 in news in the United States. Internationally, we have 26 million uniques a month. So we've become quite the go-to website for news and for print. So we were a print publication. We still are a print publication. We only deliver about 50 miles outside of DC. So our strong investment is what we do within our newsroom is technology, mobile, and other factors that I'll take you through. And Jeff has these Jeffisms. So this has also been incredible. If you've read about Amazon's culture, he's brought all of those things to what we do at the Post. The executive team, we meet with Jeff twice a month. We create memos of products that we want to launch, focuses that we're looking to hone in on, and Jeff has that conversation with us. So having someone that's literally reinventing and disrupting, depending on how you want to look at it, every pocket of business, to be able to have him as someone to help lead our news focus and our technology efforts is huge. So I'm going to show you.
There's something a little peculiar, though, I think, about the Post. And that is, I think that even in the world of journalism, I think the Post is just a little more swashbuckling. There's a little more swagger. There's a tiny bit of badassness here at the Post.
So this has really changed the culture. Personally, prior to the Washington Post, I was at the Huffington Post, and I never looked at the Washington Post as a competitor. Now it's vice versa, the amount of impact that Jeff has been able to make. So there's certain product principles. You know, we look at ourselves as a technology company. I myself, overseeing commercial product and engineering, have teams in DC, in New York, and all over. But the way that I really like to look at the Washington Post is a breeding ground for building new technologies in publishing. I think anyone who works within publishing understands that it's very hard to figure out where to invest your dollars. You want to invest in your core product, which is journalism. And then secondly, you want to invest in engineering to help that journalism. And then it's, oh yeah, we need to make money as well. And the way to really drive revenue has been a struggle, whether it's through subscriptions or through advertising. It's not an easy battle, especially as things have become more partisan. So our product principles are really trying to figure out how can we use the Washington Post to test things everywhere? How do we test the way that we tell news, how we deliver our journalism? How do we work with Facebook and Snapchat and Google to build those best experiences and not just think about them as operational, like what's the immediate ROI, but actually educational? What are our users doing on those platforms and how can we bring it back to the Post? And then also, how can we make money off this stuff, right? If we're investing in these technologies and we're building content management systems and advertising technologies, can we make money off these products? We really started channeling the value of working with third-party vendors and software companies outside of the Post, because in a world that's so distributed now on all of the social platforms, if it's not about how many users come to your site, then what is your value? Like, what is your value to the customer? What is your value to the brands? So we really try to think of these things as building things in-house. We've launched an incubator. It's called Red, which is our R&D lab where we actually build these products and test them. And technology has become a connective thread throughout the entire newsroom. Our engineers do not sit in a different area of the office in New York or in Washington. They sit within the newsroom, they sit within sales, and they sit within marketing. And I think what this really has allowed us to do is, one, have the engineers really feel like they're a part of the decision making. You know, really understand, well, why am I doing this? You know, not to be a task rabbit and say, hey, we need this built by end of week, thank you, if it's not ready, I'm gonna be pissed, but how can we build this? Like, what makes sense for the end user? And how can we, again, like, get to this common ground where we all work collaboratively together? I think someone way smarter than me once said that the focus for every single person that works at a company is audience. Whether you work in revenue, whether you're creating the content, whether you're in analytics, your goal is to grow audience. And if you're not doing that, then you're doing your job wrong. So by being able to integrate this, we allow the flexibility where people feel like they don't need to be siloed in certain sectors. They could really contribute and help build to the entire growth of the company. And there's two really common practices that we take. One is don't focus on the competition, focus on the reader. Again, to go back to Jeff-isms, he's done a really good job listening to the customer, as you've seen through Amazon's massive, massive growth. But what can we give the reader? How do we obsess over building the best experience possible? You know, if we do that, great things will come. Focusing on the core product is where all our attention should be. It's a common distraction to kind of look at, well, what are problems and what are we looking to solve? But what do we do really, really, really well? And how can we double down on that so that we really lead the industry in that particular area? And the second one is build mission-critical technologies ourselves. You know, we understand how to deliver content. We understand what our partners want. If you were here before, you saw the Wall Street Journal's example of the amazing work they're doing with branded content. We really understand the end-to-end flow of how this business works. And if we invest in the right technology and storytelling tools, then we could then make a business out of then delivering those to other partners. To go a little off, but to show you that impact, you know, the Post powers all the technology for Tribune. So LA Times, the Chicago Tribune, they power all Toronto Globe and Mail, InfoBuy in South America. So the Post is now driving revenue through licensing our technologies. It has nothing to do with the WashingtonPost.com itself. It has to do with the innovation that we're breeding internally and then figuring out ways to then give that to other customers. And again, that is this integration. You know, we have a strong focus. We're very church and state. You know, Marty Barron, our editor, is probably the one least influenced by, you know, these outside factors because we need to report on the news. I'm speaking during a time right now where James Comey is testifying publicly with the spy case, you know, against Donald Trump in the United States, and we need that technology to help keep our servers up, to help keep our experiences going. But we make sure that there's a focus everywhere. We know that there's a strong focus in revenue, whether that's subscriptions, and we know that we need to put attention there. It can't be an afterthought. And again, what could we be successful at that can't be successful elsewhere? I think within your business, and something that the Post fell into pre-Jeff acquisition was, well, what are we doing wrong and how do we get better at that? And there becomes this like attention obsession with trying to solve problems that maybe your business is not good at. Maybe you're not supposed to be solving those problems. But what do we do really well that can't be replicated? If you look at what happens in content, when there's breaking news, whether it's the Post that breaks the story, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, it's copied immediately. So every single news source you follow has a different headline, and it wins in search, and there's this obsession with scale. But what can we build that can't be copied in 15 or 20 minutes? Can we do emerging type of storytelling within VR and AR that actually brings value to the consumer? Can we focus on building technologies that allow others to do so? So double down on what you're good at, because you're already in the lead there. And don't focus so much at what you're not good at, because if you win in the other space, then better things will come. So at the Post, our audience is everywhere, and we're very aware of that. When Facebook Instant Articles came out and Google AMP came out, we went all in on these platforms. Again, we're lucky to be owned by someone like Jeff Bezos because we could take those bets. But we look at it as educational, not operational. Like, what is Facebook doing so well that users love to engage? Well, they're fast, so we need to be fast. Our content needs to load in 300 milliseconds. What's happening on the Alexa device and in audio and chatbots and so forth that we could bring back in and deliver those sort of experiences to our users? So we always opt into these sort of programs and technologies. And with that, we're building new things to help solve for this. We're doing podcasting. We're doing interactive voice assistants, and we're doing article audio. I think it's in the next couple months or maybe next month, every single Washington Post article that you read on your device, you'll have the option to then to click audio and listen to that article. So how can we give users the means to consume the way that they want to consume? It's silly when you think about the homepage of the Washington Post and the homepage of the New York Times and all of these sites. It's the same as a newspaper 50 years ago and 100 years ago. But the way we consume is completely different. The data we have on how people consume is completely different. So why are we delivering it the same old way? We could leverage these technologies to know that I'm a video consumer, or someone else is a long-form read consumer, or someone prefers audio, and give them that medium directly without having them have to go through the effort to click it. And we prefer to tell stories in a multiple, various different ways. Our storytelling, we want it to be experiential. Again, experimenting has allowed us to know whether something works and whether it doesn't work. When everyone was so in on virtual reality last year in the newsrooms, we went all in as well. And we found out that when people want news, especially coming from the Washington Post, they don't want to put on an Oculus or Gear VR headset. So we need to give that to them in every single component bucket. So while there is an investment in that is the future, maybe it's not our future today, but we could test. So I'm going to take you through some examples of how we tell these stories in all of these different formats. So this is how we tell linear storytelling. We do a lot of long-form investigative journalism. And we understand that consumers don't have the time to read all that content all at one time, whether they're on their mobile device or they lose connection or they're on desktop. So we build in different ways to navigate. Allow the user to choose a certain journey. Allow them to enter their email, take a break. So we actually send an email to the consumer and say, here's a link that'll bring you exactly back to where you left off on this article so you could continue it later. Like, again, how do we cater to the consumer? How can we build a better experience so that we're getting them to come back, getting them to engage and obsess with our brands? Don't be afraid to offer agency. I think there's a lot of concern that if you don't show the user how the story is going to unfold, then they won't make the effort to figure it out themselves. And what we found in this example was the migration from Lesbos and following that journey. And we had individual users go in and choose their own journey, and they were spending 20 minutes, 25 minutes, returning within this experience because they were going in like a various multitude of ways. So we open up these sort of experiences. Again, it's not for every piece of content. You know, reporting on what's happening in politics may not make sense for a choose your own journey when we could tell that story in one sentence. But for these deep, in-depth things that can't be replicated right away, this is what will make the post different to our readers. This is the most exciting thing so far because it's insane, but we actually built a product right here called Heliograph that uses machine learning to create articles. So think of the old style Mad Libs where you had a kind of container or frame for an article with blanks in the words. We wanted to follow we wanted to cover every single congressional district election that was happening in the United States the same time that the presidential election happened. That's virtually impossible with manpower. But we knew what the template of the story would be, and working with partner APIs and stats APIs, we could fill in the blanks in real time as things were coming in. So we've actually built this way that, again, our focus on being a technology company, we leverage in the newsroom, but also for our partners and brands as well, to be able to say, based on that user's interest or based on real-time data, we could automatically be creating content so that we could cover things where we don't even have humans present. There was a strong focus on 360 video. I mentioned our VR obsession last year and realizing that maybe VR isn't the solution for everything that we're doing.
100 miles southeast
we found that
of Amarillo,
360 video
among millions.
It works a lot. You know, think about being on a freight train and the opportunity to be on a train and look around. There's tremendous value there. So what stories do we tell where users actually want to turn around? We actually experimented doing 360 video at the presidential debates and realized that it made no sense because when two candidates are on stage, you don't want to look at the curtain behind them, right? So we realized that with these sort of things, there are experiences, but make that user want to look. Don't just do it to do it. And again, they'll come back for those sort of elements. We're also experimenting, finally, with a lot of augmented reality. This is an awesome campaign that we do within the Washington Post application that has an AR filter, where if you walk around Washington, D.C., you could put your phone around certain monuments, and it'll give you history. It'll show you what that building looked like years ago. And we're leveraging this technology to really allow users to become immersive within their landscape. Like I said earlier, there's a huge threat and fear for the partnerships and the platforms and the duopoly, as they call it, with Facebook and Google, and whether publishers should opt in. But then there's things like this that come out of what you see Snapchat doing and Facebook Messenger doing that we could actually apply to our own site and take an educational approach to these partnerships. And what's dangerous is not to evolve. I firmly believe that the Washington Post was stuck in this, you know, very pre-Bezos era. There was a fear to evolve. There was a fear to take a risk and make change, especially when you're looking at your bottom line and your revenue. There's a lot of concern that makes you want to not take too many risks. And that's extremely dangerous. I think a lot of what you read about and the innovation and things that have been coming out from what the Post is doing is because we take these risks. Is machine learning going to pay off with how we're delivering content? Who knows? But we know we could deliver more content and we could see if it works. And if it works, that's a tremendous win for us. So it's extremely dangerous not to evolve. And the fact that that is listed within our building in Washington, D.C. allows every single person that works within the Post to believe in that. So this is the no silo mentality, which I deeply preach at the Washington Post, is that the way that companies are structured and have been structured are wrong and really do not permit you to be innovative within your area because people are set to focus in a silo mentality. Do you work on the homepage product? Do you work on revenue? Do you work on analytics or video and so forth? And by doing that, you have internal competition based on what should be on the product roadmap, what should we focus on, and you look at the end line, which is, okay, we'll double down on anything that's going to drive the most money or immediate results. And by having a no silo mentality and having everyone care, from the newsroom to the business side, about everything that we do at the Post, we have everyone moving in one direction. Like when I say that 99% of the Post is on the same page with what we're doing on the technology front and the sales front and the distribution front, it's not a lie. Everyone firmly believes in this, and that's because we allow everyone to become involved. We hold all-hands meetings. We allow people to come in. We do hackathons. But a lot of different things that we do to improve our environment has not only helped our culture at the Post, but also our output and the product we develop. And this is a huge part of it, too. A lot of companies focus on lag measures. You know, what's my stock price? How many unique visitors do I have? How many of X did I sell last week? And that really doesn't allow you to evolve. It's the lead measures that allow you to evolve. Obsess over the customer. You know, respond to a customer service email in 24 hours. Well, you do that already, do it in 12 hours. And when you obsessively go after those lead measures, the lag measures will come. Your stock price will come up. You will have excellent customer service results. So it's kind of a never settle mentality, which sounds kind of awful if you do something great and like no one pats you on the back for it. You're like, come on. But to be able to obsess over those lead measures that allow you to constantly think of what's next and how you'll get to where you want to go allows you to, again, continue to be innovative and not really hit a wall. You should never hit a wall when you're doing product and technology development. There should also be a next phase. And these are the innovations that have actually come out of that. So I like to show this slide because it shows actual products that we've created that are much outside of what you'd think the Washington Post does. Activate is in purchase and lead generation. So ads on the Washington Post, we partnered with Apple Pay and Samsung Pay, where for certain advertisers, you could actually click to purchase directly on an ad and never go to a user's website. Bandito automatically A/B tests headlines. So in our newsroom, when we create content, we auto-change headlines, and we auto-change images, and we do constant A/B testing. We call it Bandito, like a one-armed bandit slot machine. And then whatever works, we automatically double down on. Clavis is our first-party data. Darwin is the way that we do testing, FlexPlay, and so forth. To the end, which is Zeus. So Zeus is like the most boring one, but I think the most important, because what we found is that we wanted to be the fastest mobile website for news. And we achieved that. You know, in August of last year, we were loading our content under 300 milliseconds. But ads are slow, and third-party integrations are slow. And as we had conversations, no one had a solution. So we actually went in and built a patented technology called Zeus that allows us to load all of our advertising and our sites 80% faster than it did before. So by, again, focusing on that and really trying to figure out what those gaps are in the market, the Washington Post is building new ways that every single person in this room could likely leverage this, whether you work in news or not. So that's Marty Barron to the left. I showed you Ben Bradley in the beginning. Marty Barron's our current executive editor. You've probably seen him if you've seen the Spotlight movie. He's in it. So big bets are counterintuitive, but that's what makes them big. Again, like the theme for this is really take those bets. And whether it's in your job scope or outside of your job scope, you know, we do a 20% rule, which is similar to what you'll hear Google do, which allows people within the engineering and product teams to spend 20% of their time on a special project, you know, on something that's outside of their scope. One, it's a great way to retain talent because they get to focus on something that they may go home and focus on and start their own company and leave. But two, it also allows them to be creative and be flexible and know that this is an environment that allows them to do it. And it also breeds products. Those products that I showed you before, half of them came out of the 20% time. The ability for our engineers and product leaders and marketers and newsroom to innovate and experiment for things that would work. And then they bring them to us and we release them to the masses. So I'm going to leave you with this, what's not going to change in the next 10 years. It's a longer quote from Jeff, but I put Jeff's face on like every slide, and I didn't want to lose everyone on that. Even though in the States it's great, people love it. But what's not going to change in the next 10 years? Again, the common obsession with like, what are we doing wrong now, or what could we fix immediately, or how do we jump on the bandwagon is a constant like day-to-day type effort for everyone when they're thinking about how to think differently and do things differently. But to really think like what's not going to change in the next 10 years and put your focus on that is where you're really going to make an impact. And this is exactly what the Washington Post did to become, again, one of the top trafficked and arguably one of the most popular news sources, especially in politics in the world, is that we knew that the newspaper model and how it worked and that revenue model wasn't going to change unless we changed it. We knew that the homepage was always going to be a headline and a description unless we started leveraging data to deliver video to the video users and images to the slideshow preferred users and so forth. So by focusing on that, it's allowed us to define and not just be able to celebrate the quality journalism and the Pulitzer Prizes and everything that we do out of our newsroom so well. It also allows us to become another company, to become a technology company, to become a software company, and whatever else we'll become in the next 10 years. So thank you. And questions? Sorry, I forgot I have the points.
Hey, I am here with Connect, the first social media platform for virtual reality, and that's why I'm digging into that. You said you tried virtual reality, but it didn't work out. So I'm wondering, what did you try?
Yeah.
And what do you think are the reasons? For example, is virtual reality or are virtual reality devices not good enough yet? Is that maybe one reason?
No, it's a great question. So a lot of publishing right now is scale. So I'm extremely bullish on virtual reality, and we did a great execution last year where we partnered with NASA and Amazon to get photos from the Mars rover, and we allowed every single consumer, whether they have Oculus, Gear VR, or even desktop application, to drive the Mars rover on Mars and see actual footage. So like, the executions are great. For us, it's expensive. And we find that, especially the content we're creating, which is breaking news for the most part, and what we're delivering, needs to be at scale. So there are certain projects, and we do have Skunkworks projects that are focusing on VR, and we also do a lot with AR. I think as these devices are more widely adapted, or companies like yours that are VR distribution platforms allow us to get that sort of scale, you'll see a deeper investment. But by no means do we not believe in it. We absolutely believe in it, but in the newsroom and the content we create, we need it to be everywhere, so we need scalable solutions. So it's not the core focus per se, but it is a focus.
Okay, thanks. Let's talk later again.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much for your good speech, and thank you very much, above all, for this picture.
Oh, you like this one?
It's very old. I'm old, so I think I know this story. Thank you very much. How do you create revenue with your new business model?
Yeah.
The question is because I'm subscribing to newsletters of two very well-known German newspapers, and I think their online business model doesn't work so far. Because the offering is not what I want. Either they want too much, so I could purchase the newsletter itself, which I can't read because it's too much, and so on. How does your business model work?
No, it's a great question. So there's a few things that we do. One, the Post was profitable last year for the first time in 50 years. That was helpful because of the Jeff investment, but it's threefold, I would say. First is advertising revenue, leveraging programmatic type executions, and the amount of traffic that we've grown and partnerships with Snapchat and Facebook has allowed us to do scale and make money back somewhat lucratively. Our subscription business, we call it the Trump bump internally, but the news right now, especially in the United States, the amount of traffic that's being driven to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, there's something new every day, has allowed people to visit, and not just visit. There's this huge economy of people that feel like if they subscribe, they're a part of the movement. So our subscriptions are up dramatically. I mean, we tripled our subscriptions just this year, doubled or tripled our subscriptions just this year, because people are coming and wanting to subscribe to be a part of that mission. The software side of it is the most interesting. So it's arcpublishing.com, arcpublishing.com, and we license 60 plus technologies to other newsrooms, to agencies that solve a lot of different things. And that's becoming a lucrative business because it's a software as a service model where we're actually licensing things that we've already built to get additional revenue. So I think it is a dance. And again, I don't believe that we'd be as sustainable as we are today if Jeff didn't buy the company 3.5, 4 years ago. But because of that and because the culture, we really have this strong movement to drive revenue through those 3 pillars: advertising, subs, and software. Cool? And for everyone to know, I don't know everyone in this picture, but again, this is All the President's Men, the actual newsroom that focused on that. Again, extremely timely today. I can't wait to look at my phone to see what's happening. But thank you all for taking the time and coming.